Welcome to a brand new episode of Sequel Rights, the podcast where we take a look at the franchises that make you go, they made how many of those? And we give each and every sequel a fair trial. My name is Justin Camps, and I'm here with
Elizabeth Helly
and
Tyler Hymanson.
And we have a very special episode in store for you guys this week.
It's rare. It's rare that we have, once we've done a series, that we get a new entry.
In fact, it's so rare that I think this is something we've been waiting for a long time. I know we stepped out for the Purge TV series.
Yes.
But I think this is the first time that one of our franchises is releasing a full-fledged new sequel.
That's right.
And we're here to talk about it with a very special guest. You may remember him from our Rambo 3 episode. Matthew Feitshans is back, the writer of Dragonheart Vengeance, the new movie. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. We're excited to talk through this new episode in the series.
That's right.
I keep saying episode every time.
Well, episode, entry,
entry. There
film.
you go. Yeah.
That language has taken over our lives.
Yes, exactly.
You're not the only one.
Yep.
There's the joke on the Oscars of just like, I love the first season of The Irishman.
That was a fantastic joke.
That was good.
Yeah, and thanks to everybody that reached out to ask us if we were going to do Dragonheart Vengeance.
Yes.
That was exciting. So yeah, any other comments you want to make, please reach out to us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sequel Rights, or email us at sequelrights@gmail.com.
And to answer those questions, we're doing that episode right now. So
Yes.
That's right.
thanks for reaching out. And in the meantime, if you could rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, 5 stars goes a long way, helps the algorithm. And we, on top of that, very much appreciate it. So any reviews that you could give, very much appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, why don't we get right into it? The brand new Dragonheart Vengeance, just out last week. This week? Yeah, last week.
Yeah.
Brand new. Here we go.
See, I'm out to avenge the death of my mother and father. 4 vicious murderers are raiding the countryside.
Maybe the dragon can help you.
I was told you help people.
Will you help me?
My name is Sivith.
So you're a girl dragon.
I need you to help me track the killers.
Find them or kill them.
Lucas, she's not a girl dragon, okay?
She's female.
Yeah. Do you see her wearing a frock? No. Well, so Matthew, this is your third now Dragonheart film that you've been the writer for. What can you tell us about the process of coming up with this new movie, Dragonheart Vengeance?
Well, these movies are always a real trick. One of the things that I see a lot in terms of people's comments and just in talking to people about these movies is, we started with Dragonheart back in 1996, right? If I'm not mistaken. And they spent a lot of money on that movie. They spent quite a bit of money to make Draco this, one of the first CG characters that was talking and interacting and things like that. And then you start doing sequels, and the market has totally changed. Appetites have changed. Most importantly, budgets and costs have changed, and you just cannot do that kind of film anymore. For a price, unless it is a giant franchise, right, that has weight behind it, something like a Game of Thrones or something, like Lord of the Rings, etc.
Where like 75% of the shots are VFX shots, if you have that character interacting and all that time. And
Exactly.
Yes, yeah.
And so we have this challenge for each Dragonheart sequel to try and live up to a film that everyone loves, to try and put as much of the dragon in it as possible, but you're always limited by, just how much money the studio's willing to spend, and they have their metrics. They have very good reasons for why they're spending this amount of money, and you have to try and do it within that realm. And literally that comes down to the numbers of shots of the dragon that that are allotted to you, and it's malleable. You can give and take in your strategizing for, okay, we'll make the movie look bigger here and give up some dragon there, or we'll make the movie look a little bit smaller here and get more dragon there. So the challenge is always, though, to come up with a way in which the dragon can be present in the whole movie, because make no mistake, we all know that's what people want to see. They want to see the dragon, and they want to see the dragon interacting with humans and the relationship there. But how do you keep that going the whole movie? Even when they're not on screen, how do you keep their presence always living, right? So in Dragonheart 3, it was this conceit that the dragon had been cursed and was, allowing us to sometimes have them be literally banished or disappearing. In Dragonheart 4, there was this conceit that the children who had this part of dragon in them, right? This dragon heritage, so to speak, kind of became the dragons themselves, right? They had abilities that enabled them to, even when the dragon wasn't there, you knew that what you were seeing was because the dragon.
It was dragon magic.
Exactly. For lack of a better word, exactly right. And then, of course, in Dragonheart 5, how do we do spoilers? We assume people have seen this.
Yes.
Okay, very good.
And if you haven't, go watch it. It's
on Netflix right now.
Netflix.
That's right. Go watch it on Netflix, and then give us a thumbs up on Amazon or wherever you can. Anyway, so the conceit in this one was that in the Dragonheart, in the first Dragonheart, the male dragon turned to stone and just had this ability. And in my mind, I began to work on it. It's like, okay, the male dragons, they have this ability perhaps to become inanimate, perhaps, become water, become stone, things like that. So the female dragons can become other animals, and it just made sense. As soon as I hit upon that and I saw our hero, who I knew was going to be this young kid whose family had been murdered, and I saw him riding across the country on his quest, and I said to myself, and the dragon is the horse? I said, fuck yeah. That's it. That's the magic I want. And once you know that, of course, we play with it a bit, and maybe you don't know at first that the dragon is the horse. Hopefully we misdirect you, enough to make it a surprise the first time it appears. But then after that, the dragon's in the whole movie, man. That's right. Whether it's a horse, a dog, a mouse, it doesn't matter what it is. And for me, that was just fun and irresistible. And it also made a good reason in this film why we would make the change now to have, among other reasons, but we really wanted a natural reason why this dragon was female and to change the trajectory of the movie a bit. And it really helped that she had a really unique ability,
absolutely,
and nature to herself that was, that was just special, and that then fed into this background that eventually she developed in the story, which was that she had been banished, and it just made sense that she was sort of living alone in the forest and had become a vegetarian. In my mind, in my mind, she started to basically, she had no one to talk to. No one wanted to be around her, so it was basically the animals. But if she kept eating them, even they wouldn't come around.
Right.
And so she eventually said, well, I'm just going to not eat them anymore, and at least I have some friends, So in my mind, there's a whole, animated movie we do with her.
Right.
Her adventures with, wolves and all that. It's like that scene in Bambi when they all come, sitting on logs. I picture that.
She's like, I have all this wisdom, but nobody wants it, and I can't impart it upon anybody.
She just keeps, separating fights between badgers and bears and things like that.
I did love that, in that one scene, we've been watching, these male dragons the entire, 4 films up to this. And in that one scene, she reveals that, their powers are totally lame, and I can turn into whatever animal I want. And you're like, okay, the female dragons are way more badass.
Yeah, it's I'm so much more useful to you.
A pile of rocks, who needs that?
Sure.
It's one of those elegant production solutions that make so much sense within the lore that I love, where it's just of course, that makes total sense of that she would have different powers and different things and different interests. And I kind of love that how it does, and I think that's something that we all kind of want to talk about, of how this dovetails with the previous Dragonheart films. And I think that her relationship with the king is one of the strongest echoes from the first film.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It was, for anyone who cares to know, so this film technically takes place over about 35 years in total, including some of the flashbacks. It's about 35 years of time. And it would actually start before number 4 ended, and it would end after number 4. So it kind of is, if you saw a timeline, it would sort of go over the course of number 4, a little bit before it and after it. And I never actually thought to myself that similarity that you're talking about with the king. Of course, it makes sense in that a lot of these stories you would have a royal, you'd have a king element or a queen element. So that would naturally be there. But this does have, it's very similar in that she has this relationship with the king, not a bond like in one, but a relationship that has radically altered her life.
Absolutely.
And kind of requires one of them to go down,
yes.
In order for happiness to be reestablished.
Yeah, I think that there's a thing, like the overall theme with the movies is that the dragons are this paragon of natural wisdom, of right, and even though that they're fallible, that they have this long-term view, and that the ways of men are selfish or warlike, and even though that they can be used for that, and that there's this great vengeance, I feel like that there's, in the title for this one, but I think that there's always, a questioning. There is the interesting thing is that they're the foil of like, I'm the one who has all the power here, but are you sure that you want to go down this path? And I think that that's a really interesting thing to dive into in this installment. That was within the foundation of all the other previous films.
Yeah, I agree with you. And she says to the boy at one point, he asks her, why couldn't you have just fixed things? You could have, no one could have stopped you. And and she says, well, once you go down that path, you can't get back. And I definitely thought of certain administrations as I was writing it out.
There was some of that later too when they talk about they started a war for no reason, just to make the king look like he was doing a great job.
Sure did.
I was like,
there's always politics.
Close to home.
There's always politics. You can't help it.
So how come? Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, you go.
I was gonna say, how come exclusively ice this time?
There was, in my mind, a certain limit to what we could do with fire in a production sense. Mm-hmm. And I found that in the other films, for me, it wasn't quite getting there. Like I wasn't totally satisfied with the power that we were able to generate the dragon. Of course, it becomes CG at some point and it can have a ferocity all of its own. But I just wanted to try something that was a little more unique. It had actually been already broached in the series in Dragonheart: A New Beginning, which is the second film. They have a dragon actually that can do both. It discovers,
right?
Yes.
So it's
depending on how he breathes.
Interesting.
Yes. That Dragonheart: A New Beginning is on its own little island. I try and just leave it there.
I have a theory.
Okay.
Maybe we can get into it.
We can answer all those questions. But it also seemed to me that it fit with the idea of someone who had been sort of banished, and there was something just like this idea of this coldness of her being relegated to the mountains. And into the snow essentially, and the the top
like
of
Elsa.
a mountain.
Yeah.
I really like that. And then also when I really it helped me a great deal to have this ability for her to have kept all this food and
that was cool.
safe for everybody. I suppose you could have also just done it in some like deep limestone cave or something, but it was just nice to have it be that was her special thing.
There's one really great moment where we get to, like, I think the most awesome use of her powers that we see when they're fighting. They come up to the snake's hideout,
right?
And just as they show up with the dragon, the snake is like, tells her henchmen, like, quick, go inside and burn the messages. And you see him run inside, and then the dragon flies over and just like breathes ice all over that entire thatched roof cottage or whatever. And you don't see what happens. Like the action continues elsewhere, and then like later on in the scene, they go inside and you see that the poor guy is totally frozen, like mid burning the messages. I thought that was really cool. That she could just fully freeze.
I did like that the freezing was so intense that like they were dead.
Yeah.
There was no like, oh, it's so cold, I'm going to unfreeze. It's like, no, you were not going to unfreeze. Like when that guy's arm fell off outside too, that was so funny.
Oh, yeah.
There was lots of great dismemberment in this.
Yes.
uh,
Yeah,
Yeah,
there really was.
I really try to get them in. It's hard. It's hard with the PG-13 films. You do have to be judicious. There was one dismemberment early on that we had to take it out. But,
what was that?
well, you I guess you hear it happen and you see the swing, but you never actually see the young mercenary's hand. There was a shot of it hitting the floor, and
I see.
a nice gout of blood. But
That was the moment of the movie where I was like, oh, this is a different type of movie for me. Like, because I was like, oh, maybe it's going towards more family friendly, and I think that there's something really interesting, especially with Dragonheart, of like starting in '96, and so fantasy has gone through, just as a genre, this roller coaster ride of, and then you have Lord of the Rings happening, and then you have Game of Thrones, and in between. And so finding the tone of this movie, it really made me kind of crave something that's in between those two things of the hard seriousness of Game of Thrones. And like, as I was talking to Justin about it after we watched it, it's like it's somewhere between Army of Darkness and Game of Thrones, where it's like
that's a fascinating combination that I have never thought of. But
where it's like it should be fun, and there's people that are making jokes, and there's people that are entertaining and not so self-serious as they would be in King's Landing. At the same time, there's still adult gore, and the PG-13 realm of fantasy is really not explored in terms of where the genre is at. And I think that there's a question of where does fantasy go after Game of Thrones, and I don't think anyone's really answered that question so far. And there's a lot of really interesting things in Dragonheart Vengeance that I think is trying to bridge the gap between the two. And so I would be really curious to hear about, as you were writing it, how you're doing the tone, how it was on the page, and then how it was executed, in the film.
I think, thankfully, it's executed pretty close to what I wrote. Thankfully, on these films, I have a lot of contact and communication with the director, and I'm on the set all the time. So it's nice to be able to just sort of try and help maintain that consistency of tone from the script to the film. And in this one, I, like you, think there's a lot of possibilities in that middle ground.
Yes.
And Dragonheart, I mean, at the end of the day, it is about literally sharing your heart with some other person, right?
Yep.
So that just has feels to it. You can't get around it. So you can't go too far to where those feelings are not, are kind of, they become, that they don't fit, right? Everything has to fit toward it. Which doesn't mean you can't have serious moments and things like that, but it just feels like you always have to remember that they are like these little mini love stories between these two characters, and they can be funny and they can be sad, but you always need that core element of them. And I always felt that, at least while I was writing this film, for me it was watching this boy who had everything taken away from him find a new family, right? Find a new group to be a part of. And that as long as you had that hope in him alive, that there was something out there to improve his lot. And at first he thinks it's vengeance, but then he begins to realize that it's something else as he learns about all the people that he's with and helps them. I think that was my North Star as I was sitting trying to think about, exactly what the tone would be.
Yeah.
I knew I also wanted this film to try and be funnier than the last two. I've always tried to put humor in the scripts that I've written. I think the 3 and 4 didn't quite get the humorous moments as quite as expressed. I did a lot of it with the dragon in all 3 films, and I think that's one of the hard things, is that you just, by the time you end up writing it in the dragon, by the time it ends up being shot on the location with people acting toward nothing but a tennis ball or a green screen, and then it's a different set of people animating it. It just the humor has some trouble sometimes getting through, and in this one the humor really was vested in Darius. The dragon as well, but really in Darius. And so once we had found Joseph Milson to play the part, it just sort of really clicked, and he was wonderful at bringing out those humorous elements, and I think that translated into everyone else kind of finding the right tone on the set. Yeah,
and it allows. I mean, so much of comedy in a film is about the chemistry of the actors and between them, and when you're working on, I mean, realistically, very tight budgets, very tight schedules with these, and you have the comedy with these giant shots that have to be rehearsed and put through every single committee and have the most people touching them. It's really hard to have that maintained. So that makes perfect sense to me.
And I think it's also about figuring out what the conceit is that will be humorous, and so, for instance, once I thought to myself, okay, the dragon is Cyrano de Bergerac, you just go, all right, now that's funny, right? That is a funny premise.
Yeah.
We just have to not get in the way of it, So just kind of do what you've seen, that kind of situation played, has been done before with different kinds of actors. Just put the dragon in, try not to get in the way of it, and it should at least be humorous, enough to make you kind of smile.
Yeah.
So you knew you wanted to have a female dragon. Were you already thinking of someone like Helena Bonham Carter, or how did she get involved in this?
She was absolutely a top choice.
Okay.
Yeah. We did explore a couple of actresses who have the dame before their name, just to try and keep with this theme or consistent casting of actors who had been, Sir Sean Connery and Sir Patrick Stewart and et cetera. But once we explored the possibilities of that, and it just sort of seemed like, okay, that may not be happening right away. We actually always get interest from people. It's more of, can we fit it, into their schedule? And everyone is actually really honored to be asked because of the pedigree of the actors that have been involved.
Nice.
But Helena Bonham Carter was absolutely like, when they said, okay, what do we want to go to? For sure, let's go to her. Because in my mind, she just had fantasy cred.
Yes,
for sure. I mean, she's got easily like 5 movies that people can refer to. And in fact, even in comments, as I've seen online and social media, they'll refer to the dragon, and then they'll put just another character name that Helena Bonham Carter has played in some other movie. So-and-so is playing Siveth, and not even using her real name.
Yeah.
So we knew that would work, I think, as far as like people going, okay, I can believe that voice. And she's actually done, a few voice acting,
which you can tell, like, she's not just being herself in this. Like, she's definitely doing the voice actor diligence, which is so nice when it's not just somebody being like, oh, I'm showing up and I'm doing this thing and it's my voice. Like, she's definitely she's creating a character with Siveth.
Right. And I tried to give her some, some meat to work with. And with Siveth, it was, again, going back to this idea of her being banished and being alone, that she would just naturally start to talk to herself and not necessarily develop a split personality, but not censor her own, speaking to herself.
Right.
It was a little more pronounced in the script. There were a few more moments of it. And I think, when we got to shooting it, it became clear that maybe we didn't have enough time in certain scenes to kind of really lean into it, but a little of it is there. And
I noticed it in the Cyrano scene that you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
When she's like telling him the lines. Yeah.
She don't want to go full Gollum.
Exactly. But you can't help it. I mean, that was so brilliantly done in that film, you can't help but be compared to that.
Yeah.
But I always thought of it, in my mind, when I was, pitching it, I sort of pitched it more Grey Gardens. In fact, that's what it says in the script. In the script, it says more Grey Gardens than Gollum and Smeagol.
Okay.
And I think that got everyone. Everyone was able to read and go, okay,
I got it.
We're not afraid of it.
Yeah. Speaking about the shooting of this film, like, there's some really incredible locations. If you want to talk about some of the actual production and where you shot and everything else, like, because there's some really incredible vistas and things like that. And then I was like, I don't even know where these locations are.
The Republic of Romania.
Yeah, Romania,
where we have made all of the prequels, 3, 4, and 5.
Nice.
They've all been shot there. And Romania is a fascinating country in that you can just kind of split it in half. The lower half is flat as a pancake. There's like nothing there but giant fields, and it's actually an enormous in 3. we shot on these enormous plains where our final battle happened, and those were like major battles of the Western civilization have taken place there. You know, like as Saladin and his armies came up, you know, from the south, and everyone died there. So the fields that we shot in are just soaked in blood.
Oh yeah,
you know,
no, absolutely.
Yeah, that particular place is called Kaluga Reni, and everyone just knows it as like, you know, just the plain of the dead. Even though now,
the trees are so green here, and it's like,
but now people camp there and they fish. But yeah, so they're all shot there. And in this one, we went further north than we ever had gone into Transylvania. You know, literally Transylvania. And we found a couple of great quarries where, you know, they just various kinds of strip mining and things like that had turned this one spot. It had turned one valley red and had turned this other valley brown. And you could just shoot one direction and it was one, you know, landscape.
Yeah.
You just had to turn the camera around 180 degrees and it looked completely different. And once we
cool.
found that, we were like, oh my God, this is fantastic. We can camp here, you know.
Was it all fresh scouting for this production, or did you revisit any locations that you found for previous ones?
No, it was all new. I mean, they were close,
Yeah.
you know, within an hour's drive or something. Sure. But no, they were all new locations for this. We've really been pushing our Romanian location scouts to the very ends of their country, and we still have more to go. There's still I think there are some so wonderful locations that we haven't used there. The trick is, of course, the further you go, the more you have to put people up in hotels, and it costs a little more. And again, at these margins, you're just always calculating, okay, I mean, I'm not kidding. Will that $1,500 come back to bite us when we want, you know, one more shot of the dragon to do this or that,
or one more ice particle or whatever?
Yeah,
it is.
exactly. You really have to think, you know, long term as far as finishing this movie off. So all the locations were there in Romania. Usually we shoot these movies in about 30 days. Wow, which, you know, is pretty quick, but that's why we shoot there, because you know, Romania, there are cost savings and there are nice tax rebates and things like that, and so it enables,
and great crew,
and the crews are really excellent. There's nonstop productions going through there. Every stage is just filled all the time. Everyone you meet has worked on more movies than you have, you know, in the past year.
I was like, I was with Terry Gilliam like last week.
Exactly. Each time I leave and come back, you know, you see, you know, some guys who were just, you know, in the grip crew and now they're key grips. And they're like all elevated. So they work really hard, and we've gotten to know a lot of the people really well and made good friends with them. I hope that we can shoot maybe elsewhere soon? Yeah, it would be great. You know, we've talked about possibly shooting in South Africa, and also taking advantage in actually Manitoba. Has some really great production possibilities. Nice. You always want to try and, you know, make the stories feel just unique and exciting. And so far, they've been kind of located either in, you know, England or that kind of area, and this one we actually were able to set it right in the Caucasus, you know, right in the area that it happens in, just because it sort of fit that this dragon flew away from home and went to a new land. But for instance, I've got, you know, stories about other dragons that I would love to do. I'd love to do one in North America, but during the time, you know, where there's just really nothing but Native Americans around, and a dragon comes here and it becomes part of the culture and the cultural mythos here. And I've got one that's set in Africa as well. So these are all dreams. You know, we'll see what happens down the road.
How many are left? How many eggs were left that we haven't?
Oh, there were 7.
Okay.
And so Siveth would be one of those.
Yeah.
And so there'd be 6 others you could do.
More. Okay.
Now, is Draco one of those?
In theory, he is.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Because at the beginning of the movie, we didn't talk about this, but at the beginning of the movie, there's like some connection back to the previous films where there's like a little opening, and we see that these dragons all came from, you know, the tutelage of Drago and King Gareth.
That's correct. Exactly.
Who were following in the last films. Yeah.
That's right. So Drago and King Gareth, who passes away at the beginning of 4, they talk about the dragons they raised together. And so, yes, so Siveth is one of those, and in my conception of it, Draco is one of those as well.
Nice.
And so in my master plan, if we can possibly get it happening, I'd love to see a film for all of the dragons that came from that brood. But then I'd actually like to see for Draco, I'd like to see a television show.
That'd be awesome.
I'd like to see the young Draco Chronicles, essentially having him going and learning, because then you could tell the whole story of what, in my mind is sort of the split, the war, I don't know if you do it a war, but some split that happens between dragons and men to get you to that place of the original Dragonheart, where there clearly has been a kind of a break in belonging between the two, species, and it drives, eventually, well, obviously we know what drives Bowen in that story to kill dragons, but kind of lead up to that, I think would provide some really fun but dark and challenging stories where these two species that have been spending a lot of time together and doing a lot of great things together and teaching and building are now being torn apart.
There's something really interesting to me about that, of just like, again, dragons of being this source of wisdom. And there's, as we've been talking about, like some of these stories, there's different things about unnecessary wars, perhaps, and that rupture of that relationship could have a parallel with our relationship with science and our relationship with, we have all this infinite wisdom, and it's like, no, we don't want any of that. Like, you're leading us astray. And I think that I would love to watch that television show.
Yeah, I think it could be a lot of fun, and also possibly even the dragon, culture. Learning or admitting to even dark things in its own past, that maybe some of them don't know about or haven't acknowledged yet. That could be a lot of fun. So that's my grand plan. If we can get that moving,
nice.
That would be the.
Well, speaking of the expanding of this universe, I think that one of the things that I really liked about Vengeance is that we get not one, but 4 antagonists early in the
That's
film.
right, yes.
And they're from far-flung lands, so they're from places where there could be eggs from the south to the north. And it really expanded the universe in a way I don't think that we've quite seen. And, it gave allusions to different factions and different kingdoms and things like that. So if you kind of talk about those characters, I think that would be really interesting. And also just kind of setting this up as almost like a samurai revenge movie of we have these 4 people we have to take out, and that's just a different structure than what we've seen.
Yeah, it was, this film, for me was a Western, right?
Absolutely.
It was, you can definitely see, outright steals from True Grit and films like that. And so in my mind, it needed some really good bad guys who could be, and the trick, of course, is, well, God, but then the dragon is so effective, like at fighting. And I know we've had some complaints in the past from some fans about like, oh, the dragon, doesn't do as much, or like the dragon lets people get away when it could just leap on top of them and rip them to shreds. And I'm always fighting for these movies that we have to try and make the dragon feel realistic. And so then that's what kind of drove me to say, okay, there's going to be 4 of them. That way we can start bumping them off. And it's not going to, ruin the movie. But once I just started thinking along those lines, then it made a lot of sense to me that they would be named after animals just to, differentiate them. I had imagined when in the script, I had imagined that, we would even see, when we see their portraits at the beginning, that we'd even do a good, the bad, and the ugly, like handwriting homage where we'd see, the bear or something like that, or like maybe a bloody footprint or something. We didn't go that far, but I thought about it.
Yeah, I do love that they get their own little like WWE intro thing, like close up on their face with the fire, and they're like, we're gonna fight you.
The director Ivan Silvestri, he really did a really good job with sort of presenting them in those moments. And we wanted to, also cast just some, really good, great faces for that. But as I continued to sort of plan it out, what I really also liked about it was that it just enabled little bits of different kinds of vengeance themes to sort of be realized a little bit. So the little speech about the wolf when he's talking to the kid about what happened to him and, killing someone who had hurt his family was the best day in his life, and the sort of relationship between the brother and the sister, at least as the actor sort of who played the snake and the scorpions kind of had this idea that they were a brother-sister pair, which I really loved, and how they would, kind of return, or how the scorpion would return for his sister and want to take vengeance on someone who had, captured her or done something to her. Just, it felt like with the four of them enabled you to dole out these little lessons and kind of, revisit the theme in small ways throughout, while allowing someone to be offed,
Which is one of the things that I feel like was so prevalent in westerns and samurai films, where it's like they're almost fables. It's like this small action of hate that gave way to this lifestyle of hate that, is supposed to be instructive, and they happen in these giant action movies where they're blood and guts and whatever it is, but their motivation and their pitfall is so clear. And I think that seeing it in this movie made me realize how much that was part of that trope.
Right. Right.
Seeing that reflected of just like, oh yeah, like here's this person, how they became this way, and the mistake that they made, and he has to kind of go through this hall of horrors of pitfalls that he could fall upon, and in each foe that he's coming up against.
Right, and that it would happen the same to a man, to a woman. It would, it wouldn't matter. And I also originally, the wolf character in the story, whose arm is frozen off at some point.
That was great.
We eventually cut it just because we thought it was kind of, again, taking a bit too much time, but he was at the end of the film in a sort of post-credit sequence. We reveal that he had survived and had gone to a place that the dragon had mentioned in a scene that, and again, we didn't shoot it, but that he had found something the dragon had referred to, and that this character would become the bad guy for the next film.
Oh,
so
man.
that one of the animals, the wolf, would be our new bad guy. And originally he had a wolf mask, and he never took it off, except for the one moment when the boy looked at his face. But the boy saw it, but we didn't. And so you could, of course, cast any actor you wanted to in the next film to play that. That was the original idea, but we went a different direction.
Yeah.
But that was also part of the plan, was to try and set up someone that we knew from this movie to continue on in the next one, to give you an even deeper bad guy who we had seen get there, and now we truly knew their motivations, etc. So that changed, but those were all the thoughts that came into mind, and obviously the calling them the different animal names sort of began to influence a little bit of how they approached their performances, and the wardrobe department did a great job, I think, of evoking certain parts of their character into who they were. So that was a lot of fun just to play with, and it gives them an identity for how brief they are on screen sometimes. The bear, he's got one scene at the beginning, and then basically his next scene, he gets it.
Yeah.
But it just gives the actors something to work with, and I think they like that.
I did get a kick out of, I was telling this to Tyler, that I got a kick out of how Sivith, the whole movie, is you can't, vengeance is bad. You can't, you got to just we're going to just find these guys, but not kill them, right? And then by the end of the movie, she's just no, these people are terrible. She straight up kills the snake, really brutally, and throws her body.
But the snake was saying some dumb stuff.
That's right.
She's just I'm
Everybody's
done.
got a breaking point.
Exactly.
That's right. I'm breaking my vegetarianism for
It's no more of this.
Yeah.
I thought that was great.
Yeah, that was I did struggle throughout, because you see the dragon involved in the action sequences, and apart from the guy who's frozen in the cabin, my excuse was that she didn't really. She just kind of froze the thing,
Right.
Hard
to know whether she knew
could
he
be
was
fine
in there.
if he was resilient.
He could be fine, right? Yeah. Maybe he found some sort of space blanket in there.
Took a potion.
Reflected all the energy. But apart from that, she does have to deal with people, but she can't just be wantonly killing them all, because it would be a little bit against the theme. So we kind of use this conceit that she's, flinging these ice daggers around, and who knows? Maybe off camera they're all they're all just turning into they find themselves in these puddles of water and just like a wound. But you did have to kind of try and show her being involved in it, but not be too blatant with how much damage is she doing to these people? But they're all pretty bad. So we didn't feel bad about it.
Another thing I wanted to just talk about, and I don't know if you have any insight into it, but one of the things I really liked about Siveth was the roar that she had in this one, and I actually saved a clip of it here just so we can hear it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty epic. I just like the crazy echoey scream. I don't know if that's part of Helena Bonham Carter's voice in there too, but
That's actually the first time I've really noticed that that pitch to it, or that tone to it. I don't have a good answer for it.
Okay,
But you know what? If I come back for Dragonheart 6, I'll find that answer out. I will find that
cool
answer out.
shriek to it that I just thought was really cool, and it fit well in the movie. I think all the dragons have had a little bit more what you would expect of a dragon. So
Definitely when we're doing the sound recording, we try to have the actors do as many of those, they call them efforts, in the recording booth. And so they're roaring and they're trying to do as much as you can. You're trying to at least get a sense of how they're doing it to see if it can inform the animation or something. So I'll be very curious to find out if someone had actually pulled some of her, roaring and sort of laced it in. It'd be great. I mean, why not? It's a really good idea.
that would be awesome. Well, I'm curious. So we talked a little bit about what's coming up next. Are we going to get to see maybe another movie with Siveth like we had, Drago? We got 2 movies with Drago. Now we're going to get another movie with Siveth after this. She's still alive at the end.
She is still alive. Part of that is how people respond to it, and how people, do fans want to see, another adventure with Siveth? And then another part of course, comes down to, do we want to try and expand the stories, by getting maybe another dragon going? It doesn't mean you can't always come back to Siveth. Of course, I would love to do a movie where it's got 2 dragons in it. That's I've been pushing for that, and I think we'll get there. As far as being able to do it on the kind of budget that we make these films on. So you could definitely maybe have a team pair up, and bring one in and have an adventure with Siveth as well. So I'm open to those possibilities. There's lots of voices in the planning of these, and you have to sort of take all the different concerns in from the marketing department to what fans are feeling like to Helena Bonham Carter, and does Helena want to come back for another round? I think she will. I think she had a really good time.
Nice.
So I'm thinking of all those possibilities, and I think we'll know a new direction for that probably within a couple of months. Usually a couple of months after these movies come out, you get the sense of, okay, we want to do another one.
Sure.
It's tracking well, people are responding well and stuff like that. But anything that people can do to, fans listening, anything people can do to interact and to, give comments and things like that, whether it be on social media or just by leaving comments, on Facebook page that Universal has for the show, it all gets read, and it's helpful.
I want a crazy super fan out there to take the map from the beginning of the film and look at the directions the dragons are flying and extrapolate out where they're headed based on their trajectory.
That would be awesome.
Someone would totally do
Someone
that.
could draw that out.
Yeah.
I want to make the timeline. If we can get the official timeline, I want to make
Somebody's-
that. I will graphic design the shit out of that.
Yeah, I'm curious.
I would love to work with you on that.
Oh, absolutely.
I've got a lot of ammo for that.
Speaking of timeline and lore and everything, so you've written 3 of these films now. So when you're writing the next Dragonheart movie or this Dragonheart movie, when you're going to add new abilities or attributes to the dragons, is there anyone else you have to go to when you're bringing up those ideas? Who else kind of has a say on I don't think the dragons would do that, or
I'm I am happy to say, at least at this moment, I am the gatekeeper.
You're the guy.
That's awesome.
The original writers of Dragonheart, Patrick Reed Johnson and Charles Edward Pogue, I know them both. I know Chuck Pogue a lot better. He was a mentor of mine as a screenwriter. So I've been to, we've spent lots of time together. He's now moved and lives in Kentucky, but we spent a lot of time together talking about movies and all sorts of things. And so it just happened to come around to be, the case that I got a chance to write on, a sequel or a prequel in this case to a movie he'd written. So that's a lot of fun. And it feels like, the mantle is kind of passed to me a bit in terms of being able to figure out, what the dragon should do. And I use his script and the story that he and Patrick wrote. And I don't use any material, of course, from the novelization that Chuck wrote of his own script. But I kind of look at it as like, okay, if it wouldn't have fit in that book tonally, then it probably shouldn't be in the series. I know a lot of fans did enjoy reading the book as well as watching the movie. And so I just kind of use it as the North Star for what we should do. And you have to branch out a little bit, right? You can't just tell the same old story. So, but I just, that's why I keep asking myself, would it be totally out of sorts with that, source material? But we definitely want to have, new dragons that each one should push the boundary in some way, right? And otherwise they're just going to be kind of the same old thing you'd seen. Whether each one of them has, a new specific ability that's as, I think, wonderful and fun as like, oh, this one can change into animals. You may not be able to do that as dramatically every time, but I think there's always a way to find out whether it's through their character or perhaps a limitation. One of those 7 dragons is going to be the runt. Yeah. So what cool thing does the runt have, that is giving it some flavor and, making it kind of interesting. And so, there's a way to make something about all of them have a unique flavor. But yeah, so at this moment, I'm the gatekeeper, and I take it really seriously because I know a lot of people like these movies, and I also want to do right by those original writers because they establish it. So I'd like to think that they watch these movies and are at least kind of proud of what they kicked off. Yeah.
I have another dreaded writing process question for you.
Is this a theme on the show? Okay.
In that you have such a production background, you grew up around films, and so you know that when you're writing these scripts that you're responsible and of what this thing actually has to be made. And so, but you're still writing these high fantasy films that have giant effects shots and everything else. And so when you're writing them and you're trying to come up with like, well, this is what Sivith would do, but I know that that's going to be outside of our budget, and knowing, well, but this is really the right thing. And so I'm going to put it in the script and maybe pushing for that, and just kind of talking about how your production process, your production knowledge is a gift and a curse in terms of the writing of these stories, because there's a trade-off there, and that fascinates me.
Yeah, it is. It's harder. It's easier and harder every time, right? Because it gets easier because you just have that many more shows under your belt, and you can almost predict what the responses will be when people read this on the page, and they go, oh, okay, here are the problems. You start ticking them off. So but it becomes harder because you want to push yourself in a way that you haven't pushed before, and you want to sort of say, hey, can we raise the bar on ourselves here to try and do something more? So I always write knowing that there's a good, whether it's 10 to 15% of what I write, it is not going to happen, right? But I do feel like what I try and really do is think about how if I make what the characters are feeling and what they believe to be sort of, if their motivations are crystal clear, then usually I can find a way to adjust the level of complexity of what's going on. And, you know, as long as I know the point here is that, you know, for instance, there's a scene in which in this movie, Vengeance, where the first animal they encounter, which is the bear, and they're fighting the bear, and Siveth is sort of flying in, and she is trying at one point to just pick Lucas up and take him away. Because I thought to myself, just like you were asking about, okay, well, that's what she would do. Right. She wouldn't bother with the bear. She would just sort of fly in, pick him up, you know, and like, you know, maybe drop a rock on his head, you know, from 50 feet above, and problem done. But shooting that was very difficult, just time-wise, and having the action, the choreography of having the dragon swoop in, try and grab him, have him move out of the way, have the, you know, the action of the bear's men running at you, keep that tension going, and it just sort of started dying. Like it was a moment in the shooting of it where we just felt it's kind of not happening. Maybe we should just sort of skip over this. But I thought to myself, you know, well, no, we can't. Like that really is what she would do. And so even though we had to simplify it, and it may not be the best action moment of the movie, like I guess I'd say it's one of kind of the scenes I thought we could have done a little bit better. But really all that was important was that you knew that's what she wanted to do, right? And so if she was trying to do that, and if Lucas was being stubborn and was not wanting to be picked up, like, no, that I don't want to be like a coward, or I don't want to, you know, you just go kill, you know, go after them. You still got everything happening that was logical, emotionally right for the characters, but you couldn't quite do it, you know, how you wanted to. If I'd had my druthers, that would have been her swooping in, reaching for him. He dives out of the way. She reaches for him again. He ducks under it, and she's like, "What are you doing? I'm trying to pick you up." And he's like, "I don't want you to pick me up," you know? Yeah. So, you know, I think it's trying to be crystal clear about what your intentions are. And then sometimes you just lose, you know, sometimes you lose something that you love, and you have to realize that it's just not going to happen. So we either have to cut it or make it all happen so that you can shoot it in one day instead of 3, which you know it should take. That's really the hardest part about these movies at this budget level is you do have to make these hard decisions sometimes. And I know I always feel it, like I'm out there in the middle of Romania, and it's, you know, and it's 40 degrees or something like that, and we have to face a decision like this, you know, that okay, the dragon is not going to be able to do that; it's going to have to do this. And I just think to myself, oh, people are going to kill me over this part, right? They're gonna say that was so lame. And I just have to hope that, you know, the other parts that aren't lame in that moment kind of make up for it. Yeah. You know, there's just no getting around it. It's movie making.
It's all active problem solving. Yeah. And I love the thought of just like, if you have that North Star, if you have the compass of like, this is the character's intent, then you can dictate whatever compromise you have to make around that absolute truth of like, this is what the scene has to do.
Yeah. I'd say that gets you out of it in some way or another.
Well, usually when we get to the end of a franchise, not that it's the end, but you know, the end of an episode
of what we have to talk about.
Yeah, the current end of the franchise. We like to sometimes guess at what might be coming up next or something. And I don't know if anyone has any things, but I wanted to talk about my crackpot theory.
Okay,
I want to hear these theories.
Yes, I have a crackpot theory that I came up with today. Just today. So I know you were talking about how Drake and A New Beginning is kind of like off on its own thing, but I was thinking, you know, this is the first time we've had an ice dragon, but then I was like, wait a minute. Drake also had he had a fire lung and an ice lung, right? And his egg was found in Draco's cave. But we never really know who the mother is, right? I don't think. So what if Siveth is the mother with Draco? That's my crackpot theory.
But also, aren't they like brother and sister?
Yeah, I don't know how that works exactly.
In my mind, they are from the same clutch of eggs in a way, but they're kind of all like these mystical creatures made of stardust. I don't think they have brothers and sisters exactly like we do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we can get around that one.
Theory intact.
That's my get out of jail free ticket for that one. Yeah. And I would say that your theory is extremely possible.
Nice.
I can't confirm it yet, but extremely possible. And it would go a long way to making that Griffin Dragonheart 2 island make more sense.
Yeah.
Bridge the gap.
Yeah.
Wasn't there like a Chinese dragon in that group too?
But that was that was like an older dragon though, right?
Oh, okay.
They were
Trapped in a
I didn't
man's
know
body.
if he was one of the eggs
Yes.
or something. Okay.
Yeah, now that sequel was made in, I think it was 2001 that it came out, so it was fairly close after
Yeah.
the original. And it was just a different kind of, it was a different time of movie making, and I think they went for a much younger audience with it, right? Because they had, the cast was much younger,
yes.
and the dragon, obviously, it was younger. Effects were more limited at that time.
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah.
there are a lot of, shall we say, I think things that would be done differently,
Yeah.
nowadays, which is kind of why it just, and being a sequel, it can just sort of stay as on that side of the movie, on side of the original movie, and we can do anything we want on, the previous side.
Yeah, I'm curious if you guys have ever discussed like going back into the like present timeline of where, because Drake is still alive at the end of that movie too, and supposedly having adventures with his friend. I can't remember his name.
Guy from Malcolm in the Middle.
Yeah.
That's right. No, we've never discussed that. Maybe.
Yeah, good to know.
I know that I want to see, and maybe it's part of the TV show you mentioned, or maybe it's its own movie. I want to see the Southern Desert folks with just like a warlord dragon that's just like the evil one that's just like let's conquer, and like it's the complete opposite. I don't know who the protagonist is in this story, but like that's like I was fascinated by that. Like I really liked that the Four Corners villains. I felt like it really expanded the universe, and I want to see like, oh, they have an egg, they have this prophecy, and like that's maybe part of the thing that causes the rift of like that there's this dragon that's just like, nope, like let's conquer as many things as we can.
I think that's a great idea, and I really like. I think that's another way to like we talked about. The one dragon is the runt.
Yeah.
I think another dragon can simply be gullible,
Yeah.
or naive, or maybe this is. I mean, it's not literal what I'm saying, but maybe just didn't pay attention in school. Like it didn't learn the lessons from Drago that Siveth did. In fact, it internalized them in a different way. And is completely misrepresenting.
Yeah.
Right? And it's become a tyrant.
Yeah.
Or-
Like,
yeah,
I think
or-
that would be fantastic.
Or those people, they fit on all these stories, and maybe the whole arc is him realizing, like, oh, like everything that they told me was a lie. Like like I'm their religion, and that religion is wrong.
Right. Of course, now the trick is that we would always have to find a way in which there is a bit of dragon goodness.
Yes,
So the
exactly.
question
Yeah,
would
it's just
be-
it's like turning on them and
Right.
like, oh no.
Would that be a story about a dragon that finds its
Yes.
its moral center and so we goes kind of from bad to good?
Yes.
Or would that be one where there's another dragon in it?
The Two Dragon movie.
The Two Dragon movie.
Maybe that's the Two Dragon movie.
Yes.
Yeah, the magical.
Yes.
magical
The
Two Dragon
magical-
movie.
Yes, the unicorn.
That's right.
Yeah, and not to be all affirmative action about it or whatever, but we have a lady dragon now, and I know we had those twins last time, but a female human protagonist
Yes,
would be
that-
cool.
That is 100%
Yeah.
on my
Yeah, that would
radar.
be
awesome.
That would definitely be awesome.
I'm pitching that for the next. If I get the chance to write another one, that's my pitch. Is that it will
Sweet.
be about a female protagonist. It's
Yeah.
about time.
And then also because I just like the fact that we've had so many sequels now, it would be cool to see some of the human characters from different movies somehow coming back and interacting. I know the timelines aren't quite there, but as you said, this one takes place within, so it's possible.
Definitely a
Could be
possibility.
cool.
And we have a relationship between Siveth and Darius in this story, and so there's no reason, if we can. If the actors want to come back and it works, there's no reason we couldn't continue those adventures and, see what happens next to them.
Darius seems like a guy who could turn up anywhere.
Absolutely, yeah. In whatever fashion of the
Exactly.
area that he has, he'll be looking for that.
That was fun. Well, I think we might wrap up here.
Yeah.
Matthew, it was so great having you on this episode.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'd love to come back anytime.
Yeah.
And I know you said that people can, of course, help out by posting or giving ratings and thumbs up or whatever it is online. But are there any other projects that you want to talk about, or where can people keep up with you?
On Twitter, people can keep up with me. I'm at MatthewGF. And wait, is that right? I think so.
I think so.
Yeah, Matthew GF.
We'll post it too. So yeah,
Exactly. And yes,
that's
there's a Facebook page, Dragonheart Facebook page. People can go to that. And there's also on Instagram, there's a Dragonheart account that people can interact with. So those are all great places. I lurk on them, so I read messages and read comments, and I'm very brave that way. Yeah, I wade through comments, the good and the bad.
Yes,
I can take
do
it.
it,
Yeah, it's fun.
Well, that's great. Well, yeah, that's going to bring us to the end of the episode on Dragonheart Vengeance.
yeah. It's on Netflix now. You can watch it. Tell your friends about it.
Oh, I forgot to mention too at the beginning of the movie. I don't know. Were you guys watching close enough when the main title comes up? The V comes up first.
It does. It does.
I thought that was cool. I like Dragonheart 5.
A little Easter egg for people that remember Roman numerals.
I put the V in bold in the script.
Yes.
That's awesome. Oh man, we were just complaining a bunch about how Bad Boys for Life is not the fourth movie.
Oh yes,
movie.
Missed opportunity.
I'm glad somebody's paying attention
right.
to these numbers. Anyway, send us an email for what other things you guys want to see. We'll be back to Highlander, but after that, let us know what you want, and also find us on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sequel Rights.
And rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Put what Dragon Age stories did you want to see in the comments, and we'll talk about them on air, and maybe we'll even repost them to the Facebook.
Dragon Age, Tyler.
I'm sorry, Dragonheart. I told you I was going to do it once.
Dragon Age is cool too.
Dragon Age is cool. Well, awesome. Thank you again for Matthew Feitchens for being here to talk with us this week. We'll be back next week with Highlander: The Final Dimension, the third film in the series. But in the meantime, we're going to spend the rest of the week jamming out to the Dragonheart theme
Yes.
from Mark McKenzie's new score. We'll see you guys next week.